Is the sell-off in Tesla over? Hey everybody, let's have a look at shares of Tesla. Now before we look at Tesla, we do have to understand that it's one of the most emotionally involved stocks in terms of the traders and investor base. A lot of people either absolutely love the stock and what the company does, or it's the exact opposite. And so that essentially creates a lot of volatility, which can also create a lot of opportunity if we're looking at it in the proper way. So let's first understand a little bit what's going on here, and I think this is going to help set a lot of perspective. So what we're looking at here is just a multi-year chart. I'm going to keep it daily, and what we saw is a very classic sort of breakout move that started to take place in the stock in let's call it the autumn of last year. The initial burst happened in September. We ended up getting momentum buy signals, and then it really blasted off and basically doubled into the middle part of December. And ever since then, basically the stock has mean reverted and kind of given up most of that gain. Something that we've actually been talking to clients about is something that we think is very possible to happen. And so here we are. And what now? Well, let's quickly give us some perspective in terms of our own signals. Again, we do have Tesla in a bullish trend. You can see how that phase transition worked. It was in a little bit of a bearish trend. That's the red background color. Then moved into a neutral trend. That's the black background color, and ultimately into a bullish trend. And again, we got that momentum buy signal in October. Stock then rallied 90+%, and it's now coming back. You can see the trailing stop. So we ended up reaching our profit targets very quickly, and then the trailing stop would have stopped us out for the remainder of it for a gain of about 50%. And then what ended up happening is we started getting into a choppy area. So the stock then turned into, and you can see it here even a bit better, here's our momentum buy signal that came around the same time, I think a few days earlier in October, and then again the stock doubled, for the most part doubled from there. We then entered what we call a chop zone. And there really was nothing to do. The stock started topping out, and we ended up moving into this very choppy period, which the stock has now come out of to the downside. So that choppy period created a couple of signals that basically really led nowhere. A sell signal that didn't break below anything, a buy signal that didn't break above anything. But then finally we had a sell signal that within a few days, finally on the 6th of February, led to a break out of that range. And since then, our momentum indicator has told us the stock is likely to go lower. I think it could still go somewhat lower. I wouldn't press shorts here because from that entry point when it became valid, the stock is now down about 25%. So again, long story short, a process is really important when we look at a stock like this. But of course, the question all of you guys want to know is, where is it likely to go right now? I think the stock might be getting a bit near-term oversold, but I really do think that if the remember this has a very high correlation to the broader market, it's got a higher beta too. I think if this stock doesn't completely reverse very sharply soon, I do think there's a really good chance that it retests maybe down into the 260s. That's not very far from here by the time you watch this video. Maybe the stock is at that level. I don't know, but I do think there's a chance that the stock does go lower still after from there. So remember, the stock has now, after doubling in late last year, is now down 40%. That's a pretty big move, right? Even for Tesla. So I don't think the structural long-term story for the stock has died. I think what happened in the fourth quarter of last year is that people got very bullish on the stock, largely for potentially some political reasons, maybe some fascination with the CEO, and I think that's all fine and well, and clearly that worked, I should say, right? So that's great. But those kinds of things tend to not last very long unless they're backed up by fundamentals. And the structural and fundamental story has now changed, or has now caught up with the sentiment, or I guess took the legs out of the sentiment. And that's always the risk, that people that are purely sentiment and chart chasing driven tend to ultimately get decapitated. And of course, we don't want to fall into that trap. So I think the stock could have somewhat more downside here. Wouldn't press shorts. I would be looking for some sort of a bottoming pattern to take place over a number of at least weeks, maybe more. I don't think there's any rush to get back into the stock, but we'll keep you updated and see how it works out.